Hello students, myself Mr. Santosh Pawar welcomes you all in MJC Learning. Under the chapter Control and Coordination, today we are going to see the next endocrine gland and the most important endocrine gland, that is pituitary gland. So student, our today's topic is pituitary gland. Under this topic, we will see the introduction, position, size, shape, color, weight and the origin of a pituitary gland. Student, this is nothing but the external morphology of a pituitary gland. Besides the external morphology of a pituitary gland, we are going to see the anatomy of a pituitary gland. So student, our today's content is external morphology of a pituitary gland and the anatomy of a pituitary gland. The points for the external morphology of a pituitary gland are introduction, position, size, shape, color, weight and the origin. So we start with our point number 1, that is introduction. Introduction related to the pituitary gland. Students, pituitary gland is also known as a master gland. It is known as a master gland because it controls the secretion of all other endocrine gland. It controls the secretion of all other endocrine gland, so the name is given master gland. It is also called as a hypophysis. It is also called as a hypophysis because it is situated just below the hypothalamus of a brain. Hypothalamus, it is a part of a forebrain. So it is located just below the hypothalamus of a brain. So it is also known as a hypophysis. So student, pituitary gland has another two names. One is a master gland, another one is a hypophysis. The name master gland is given because it controls the secretion of all other endocrine glands. And the name hypophysis is given because it is located just below the hypothalamus of the brain. So this is about the introduction of a pituitary gland. We start with a position. Position of a pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is located just below the hypothalamus and posterior to the optic chiasma. So pituitary gland is located just below the hypothalamus and posterior to the optic chiasma. Optic chiasma, again it is a part of a brain. It is lodged in the cavity of a cranium. That cavity of a cranium is called as a sella turcica. So pituitary gland is a lodge or it is located within the cavity of a cranium. That cavity of a cranium is called as a sella turcica. Student, this pituitary gland is connected to the hypothalamus. It is connected to the hypothalamus by means of a stalk. That stalk is called as a infundibulum stalk. So pituitary gland is connected to the brain or it is connected to the hypothalamus by means of one stalk, and the name of that stalk is infundibulum stalk. So this is about the position of a pituitary gland. We will repeat the points again. Position of a pituitary gland. It is situated below the hypothalamus and posterior to the optic chiasma. It is lodged in the cavity of a cranium. That cavity of a cranium is known as a sella turcica. So sella turcica is the cavity of a cranium into which the pituitary gland is lodged. Further, it is connected to the hypothalamus by means of one stalk. That stalk is called as a infundibulum stalk. This is about the position of a pituitary gland. Let's see the next point, that is size and shape of a pituitary gland. The size of a pituitary gland, length, it is about 10 mm, breadth, it is about 6 mm, and the height, it is about 3 mm. So the size of a pituitary gland, it is 10 into 6 into 3 mm. 10 mm, it's a length, breadth is about a 6 mm, and the height is about a 3 mm. So size of a pituitary gland is 10 into 6 into 3 mm. Further, the shape of the pituitary gland, it is of a P shape. It is of a P shape. So size and the shape of the pituitary gland, size of a pituitary gland is 10 into 6 into 3 millimeter, and the shape is of a P shape. This is about the size and the shape of the pituitary gland. Let's see the next point, that is color and weight. Pituitary gland is reddish gray in a color. Further, its weight is about 0.5 gram to 1.2 gram. Student, in female, especially during the pregnancy, the weight of a pituitary gland gets increased and it becomes 1.2 gram. So the weight of a pituitary gland, it is 0.5 gram to 1.2 gram, and in a female, especially during the pregnancy, its weight gets increased and it becomes a 1.2 gram. Its a color, it is about reddish gray in color. So student, color of a pituitary gland is a reddish gray in color, and the weight is about 0.5 gram to 1.2 gram, and in a female, especially during the pregnancy, its weight gets increased and it becomes a 1.2 gram. Our next point is origin. Origin of a pituitary gland. Pituitary gland is ectodermal and endodermal in origin. That means it has a dual origin. It has a dual origin because it develops from the ectoderm and the endoderm. So it is ectodermal and endodermal in origin. So it is called as a dual origin gland. So origin of a pituitary gland, it has a dual origin because it develops from the ectoderm and the endoderm. So it has a dual origin. This is about the origin of a pituitary gland. We just revise all the external morphology of a pituitary glands once again. Pituitary gland is also called as a hypophysis because it is located just below the hypothalamus. It is also called as a master gland because it controls the functioning of all other endocrine glands. Further, its position, it is situated just below the hypothalamus and posterior to optic chiasma. It is lodged in the cavity of a cranium, which is called as a sella turcica. Further, it is connected to the hypothalamus by means of a stalk which is called as an infundibulum stalk. Size, the size of the pituitary gland is a 10 into 6 into 3 millimeter. The shape of the pituitary gland is a P shape. The color of the pituitary gland is a reddish gray in color, and its weight, it is about 0.5 gram to 1.2 gram. But in a female, during pregnancy, its weight gets increases and it becomes 1.2 gram. Pituitary gland is ectodermal and endodermal in origin. That means both the lobes of pituitary gland develops from the different parts of the embryo. So pituitary gland has a dual origin. This is about the external morphology of a pituitary gland. Let's start with the anatomy of a pituitary gland. Pituitary gland consists of two lobes. One is of an anterior lobe, another is of a posterior lobe. Anterior lobe is called as a adenohypophysis, and the posterior lobe is known as a neurohypophysis. So student, pituitary gland has a two lobe. It consists of two lobes. Anterior lobe is known as a adenohypophysis, and the posterior lobe is known as a neurohypophysis. So adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis are the two lobes of a pituitary gland. Let's see the detailed study of both the lobes, that is adenohypophysis and the neurohypophysis. Adenohypophysis, point 1, it is the anterior lobe of a pituitary gland. Number 2, it is the largest lobe of a pituitary gland. Number 3, it forms 75% of the pituitary gland. I repeat, it is the anterior lobe of a pituitary gland. It is the largest lobe of a pituitary gland. It forms a 75% of a pituitary gland. Point number 4, it consists of three parts: pars tuberalis, pars distalis and the pars intermedia. So student, adenohypophysis has three parts: pars tuberalis, pars distalis and the pars intermedia. Further, histologically, it consists of three type of a cell. One is a acidophil, second one is a basophil and third one is a chromophobe. So adenohypophysis histologically is made up of three type of cells, and they are acidophils, basophils and the chromophores. These lobe, that is adenohypophysis, it secretes seven different hormones. It secretes seven different hormones. It develops as an outgrowth from the roof of the buccal cavity. Adenohypophysis develops as an outgrowth from the roof of the buccal cavity. So these are the points related to the adenohypophysis. I repeat all the points once again. Point number 1, it is the anterior lobe of a pituitary gland. It is the largest lobe of a pituitary gland. Point number 3, it forms 75% of the pituitary gland. Number 4, it has three parts, and the name of that parts are pars tuberalis, pars distalis and the pars intermedia. Point number 5, histologically, this lobe is made up of three type of cells. They are acidophils, basophils and the chromophores. Point number 6, it secretes seven different hormones. So student, seven different hormones are secreted from the adenohypophysis. And the last point, it develops as an outgrowth from the roof of the buccal cavity. This is about the adenohypophysis, which is the anterior lobe, which is the largest lobe. It forms 75% of the pituitary gland. It has three parts: pars tuberalis, pars distalis and the pars intermedia. Histologically, it has three cells: acidophils, basophils and the chromophores. It secretes total seven different hormones, and it develops as an outgrowth from the roof of the buccal cavity. Let's see the neurohypophysis. Neurohypophysis, point 1, it is a posterior lobe of a pituitary gland. Number 2, it is the smallest lobe of a pituitary gland. Number 3, it forms 25% of a pituitary gland. Number 4, it has three parts: median eminence, infundibulum stalk and the pars nervosa. So median eminence, infundibulum stalk and the pars nervosa are the three parts of a neurohypophysis. Further, histologically, these lobe is also consist of three type of cells: neurogilial cell, ependymal cell and the pituocytes. Neurogilial cell, ependymal cell and the pituocyte are the three cells of neurohypophysis. Student, the most important point related to the neurohypophysis is that it does not produce hormones of its own. It does not produce hormones of its own, but it receives and it stores two hormones which are secreted by the hypothalamus. So hypothalamus secretes two hormones. That hormones are received by the neurohypophysis. That hormones are received and stored by the neurohypophysis, but neurohypophysis itself does not produce any type of hormones. I repeat the points. Neurohypophysis, it is a posterior lobe of a pituitary gland. It is the smallest lobe of a pituitary gland. It forms 25% of a pituitary gland. It has three parts: median eminence, infundibulum stalk and the pars nervosa. Histologically, it also consists of three type of a cell. One is a neurogilial cell, ependymal cell and the pituocyte. And the most important point, it itself does not produce any hormones. It itself does not produce or secrete any hormone, but it receives and stores two hormones which are secreted by the hypothalamus. So this is about the neuro hypothesis and the anatomy of a pituitary gland. So student, today we have seen the external morphology of a pituitary gland and the anatomy of a pituitary gland. Thank you so much.